Hello, everyone. Good evening. This is Mani Nair from Namaste Debate. I hope you all are doing well. I hope you all got vaccinated. If not, please do so at the earliest. And as we all know that we are going through a snap election process, and tomorrow is the E-Day, election day, our last opportunity to exercise our right, democratic right to vote. So if you haven't voted during the early polling, advanced polling, please do so tomorrow. But before you do that, please make sure you read the platform and then you vote. So if you haven't read, today is an opportunity that we're going to talk about platform and some of our local candidates. So today I have invited Luisa D'Amato. She's a well-recognized face and columnist in Waterloo Region. Hi, Luisa. How are you?
Very well. Thank you for having me on the show.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for accepting my invite. So, how are things? If you want, you can start by introducing yourself.
Sure. I am a columnist with the Waterloo Region Record. I write about local issues. Whatever I think local people are thinking about, that's what I write about. I've been at the Record since 1984 and seen the community change very, very significantly in those times. And I love what I do. I work out of my home, but I feel very connected to people and places in the region.
Okay, good. So, as we discussed earlier, what I want to cover today is just quickly go through some of the platform highlights. And
Mhm.
then, if time permits, we'll talk about some of our local candidates. Altogether, we have like 29 candidates in Waterloo region. So, and it'll be interesting election. It'll be a close election based on the pollings. So, if you're ready, I'm going to start with the first one, and then we'll go through a couple of list of agendas. So, my first question is on COVID recovery. So, if I look at the platform for the COVID recovery, so the Trudeau government has spent a lot of money, trying to help, people who lost their job
Yeah.
and trying to help the businesses, but a lot of businesses also felt that they didn't get the money at the right time and all that. What is your general sense on that one? So spending money will solve the issue, or do you think we should also continue, the government should also continue with the rent subsidy program and all the employment subsidies where the employers hire and they get some form of funding from the federal government? What is your thought on that?
Well, I think that the one thing when I go out and talk to people, the one thing that I find is that people really give Trudeau and the Liberals credit for having gotten badly needed funds out to people quickly and quite generously. And I say that not, I know people who didn't have any work and the CERB helped them survive. Other people I know who run small businesses and the government helped them with rent, helped them to be able to make their rent payments. And also I didn't mention this when I was introducing myself, but I am the executive director of a small nonprofit arts organization called the Grand Philharmonic Choir, and we received wage subsidies from the government because our revenue was very low down. We have concerts, and one of the worst things you can do during COVID is have people packed into a concert hall while other people sing their hearts out. So we haven't been able to do that for 18 months, and so we didn't get any revenue from tickets, and therefore we received federal wage subsidies, which really helped us. So I think that's one thing that the Liberals have done a very good job at, and that is just getting money out fast in a crisis to people who needed it. Now, the more difficult part will be rebuilding the economy, making sure inflation isn't too high as a result of the debts and so on. So I think that's going to be more difficult, perhaps, for the Liberals to do. But I think their track record in the pandemic was excellent. And I'm not a big fan of Trudeau, but I thought he did a great job at that.
Okay, good. So according to the platform, what the Liberal government is saying is they will extend the emergency wage subsidy to October,
Mhm.
and they will also carry on with the Canada Recovery Hiring Program to March 31st. But according to conservatives, they are saying they would like to wind down the emergency spending, but still want to continue helping, people who lost their job, and what they're suggesting is like they want to continue paying like 50% of the salary,
Hmm.
or whoever hires whoever employers hires a new person, right?
Right.
So policy wise, I don't see much difference on the platform side. But it depends. If a conservative says that they will wind down emergency spending, we have to see, how that reflects, right? So, overall, like how the job market looks like. A lot of variables are there in that one.
You're exactly right. And I think one of the problems we have is the pandemic is still with us. We don't know what's going to happen this fall as people start moving indoors. We've had a nice long summer, but when people start moving indoors in greater numbers, we might see those pandemic numbers go up. The economy might have to be halted. We might be sort of ordered to stay home more than we have been, and that could really push the economy down again. So I think whichever party gets into power, they're going to have to kind of calibrate it based on the circumstances,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah.
So giving dates by which they're going to do things, we don't really know what's going to be needed
Yeah.
at this time. That's my feeling.
But at the moment, looks like we have billions. So we don't have to worry about money. If not,
Well, I
what
don't
about?
know about that. I'm a little bit worried at the amount of debt that we're racking up. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of people are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. The next one is childcare. So when it
Mhm.
comes to childcare, I feel liberals, $10 a day is a good idea, but now
Mhm.
the question is, where are the spaces? Okay, you can offer, rebates on the money part, so that's good, because we know the daycares are very expensive,
Mhm.
but $10 a day is good. But where are the spaces? But they're going to spend like $30 billion over 5 years. But according to conservative, they will cancel this plan, but instead they're going to give some sort of a credit. So what is your thought on that one?
Well, that's a very, very interesting question. And it's not the first time it's come up. The conservatives do something that I think is very reasonable. And I speak as somebody who worked while my children were small. I put them in childcare. I had one in a daycare center, and I had the other in a private home with a family because I felt that's what each child needed. One of the one that was in with a family, I felt would have been very he was he was somebody who needed what he needed when he needed it. He needed to go and lie down when he needed to. So it was better with a family. Their schedule was more flexible than a childcare center. And I say that because my feeling about the tax credit is that it's better than people think it is. If you give everybody a tax credit who's a parent, they can use it. Let's say they decide that somebody's going to stay at home and look after the children, then they can use that money to provide enrichment and to offset the fact that they've given up an income to do that. I think that shows that has underneath it the belief that parents know best for their kids what they need best, what they need the most. Not everybody's child, not everybody can find high quality licensed childcare. It's
Yeah.
hard to find in rural areas. It's easier to find in cities, but there's often a long waiting list. It's really difficult to find that. So people will go to a neighbor, or they'll stay home with their child, or they'll do other things. And I think if you provide money equally to each parent to offset the cost of care, that is more fair than only rewarding people who put their children in licensed daycare, because it's just not for everybody.
But one caveat I see with the conservative idea is, what they're saying is they will give refundable tax credit to cover up to 75% of the childcare costs for lower income families.
Hmm.
I don't think that includes everyone, only lower income, but I think the liberal plan includes everyone.
Okay. I
So
don't know
that,
what the liberal plan will cost, and I wouldn't believe what they put on the platform, because
yeah,
that sounds like a very, very expensive thing. Like $10 a day is $300 a month, and people are paying almost $2,000 a month right now for childcare.
yeah. So they're going to spend 30 billions over 5 years. They already have signed some deal with around 8 provinces.
Hmm.
So I think 8 provinces, they're okay with the deal.
Hmm.
Uh, in terms of conservative, what they're saying is they will cancel the liberal program. So I would say, if there is a conservative government, they should also accommodate some of the good ideas from the other platform as well. But the one thing I like, the credit idea, but they're only extending it to lower income families. So
Do
that's
they say what they mean by lower income?
that's another thing. It's just like an affordable housing, right? Today, affordable housing for me means $1 million.
Low income could mean anything under $140,000 a year. I
Yeah.
don't know what it means. So it's almost meaningless. I will say that in Quebec, what I've read about the Quebec experiment, and they have got $10 a day daycare there, is that whatever they spend on the childcare, subsidizing the childcare in the centers, they get back because the women go out to work and then they pay
Right.
taxes and they get the money back. So if it's well run, it can really stimulate the economy.
Right.
But I think it's just very important not to create not to be divisive and not to create two groups of parents, those who put their children in or who can find licensed childcare to put in their child, and those who are more comfortable with family members doing it or a neighbor that they trust. And those people shouldn't be penalized. Like it's got to be equitable for everybody.
Yeah.
That's important.
So according to New Democrat, they support the 10 per day childcare program, but they have not provided a plan yet. Right.
Yeah.
So that's other thing. So sometime, people, the parties support a lot of things, but they don't have plan. Probably they'll have plan once they're in the government, maybe. But at the moment, what I'm reading is NDP doesn't have a plan for the childcare, how they're going to implement the childcare program.
Well, that brings us to a point, Mani, which is that people can put in the platforms anything they want.
Yeah.
We know from past experience that they don't always, when they get into power, they don't deliver what they promised in the platform. So why would we even spend that much time even reading it? Maybe it's more about trust.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And if they don't put a lot of detail in, what does that tell you about whether they're interested in making that happen or not?
Right.
Right.
So in Quebec, what I read is they already received, I think the federal government announced $6 billion in August without any condition. It's a very interesting thing, without any condition. For over $6 billion over 5 years. The Trudeau government announced in October without any condition. So that's interesting. 6 billion is
that's a tiny sum. Well, maybe it's because Quebec is considered to be more of a separate nation than the other provinces.
Yeah. But sometimes I feel we tend to be appeasing just one province just because we don't want to inflame the separatist thoughts and all those things. Yeah.
Oh, sure. We can talk about that if you want.
Yeah. Good. Okay, so next one is the climate change. So as you know, everybody is very big fan of Paris Agreement. They want to bring down tons of carbon down, those kind of things. They're spending a lot of money. The liberals are saying they want to bring the emissions down by 40 to 45%. Conservatives are saying they're going to bring it down to 30%. But one interesting thing, what I found with the conservative platform which is slightly different from the liberal platform. So right now we are paying for the carbon tax, right?
Yeah.
And we don't know where the money is going. Okay, of course the government will say we'll reinvest and all that. So I don't know if there is a way to track or not. But what the conservative government is proposing is it's actually a carbon price on the consumer side, right? So I'm assuming what it means is if I buy a product which is not, which has more carbon, so I will pay more. Probably there'll be a taxation or something. But that money, basically what they're saying is you can basically put it in a carbon savings account and you can withdraw that money and use it for green products. And I find that is very interesting.
Well, that offers total transparency, doesn't it?
Right. And it's up to the consumer how you want to use that money, right? So right now we have no way to track that. We just go with what the government version is. We will reinvest. Right. But I like that conservative proposal of pricing of carbon for consumers.
Yes, I think a lot of people find the whole climate change issue to be so complex and so huge that even a little bit of transparency where you can say, okay, I bought a new computer, I'm paying $50. I took a plane to Vancouver. I'm going to pay $100 because of the carbon it's created. And that money is going into this account and I'm going to save up and pick up some solar panels for my roof.
Right.
Right. That allows a certain amount of transparency, which I think is very badly needed in this whole thing.
Correct.
But I would say when I've gone through all of the climate change plans for the political parties, I see a lot of problems. And one of them is that they focus almost exclusively on fuel.
Yeah.
And they don't talk about some other things, like, for example, our meat-based diet
Right.
accounts for 20% of emissions, and none of these parties has anything about trying to encourage people to eat more plant-based meals. The only person who has been talking about that is Ellen Papenburg from the Animal Protection Party, who
Okay.
is in Kitchener Center, which is a fringe party. But this is an issue that's very important to climate change, and not a word. I think it's very, very interesting how we have this sort of collective blind spot.
I think probably the reason could be what they're saying is we live in a cold country. We can live without fuel, but we cannot live without our meat.
Well, you warm yourself up at the barbecue? Is that the idea?
That's the idea, right? Everybody is so obsessed about this fuel, and we don't, people don't understand. It's strategic. Canada is a resource-based country, and like
Yes.
in terms of reserves, we are the third in the world, I think, after Saudi Arabia and Venezuela. Right?
I
Let's say
agree.
we stop the whole oil thing, but there are other countries who can provide oil and make money.
I know, and I don't see the point in. I personally don't see the point in canceling oil production in Alberta so that we can import it from Saudi Arabia.
Correct.
I think that's insane. And I think that for all the people who want to stop pipelines, if we stopped Line 5, which brings oil and gas into Ontario and Quebec, and which the governor of Michigan has been saying she's afraid it's going to rupture and she wants to stop oil, and we would have a big problem. I almost think that climate change has to be handled the way we're dealing with vaccines right now. Like the people who didn't want to get vaccines, now that you can't go into a restaurant, you're not going to be able to go into a community center or recreational facility or a bar. You aren't going to be able to go into those places unless you can show proof of vaccination. That's going to make people get vaccinated a lot faster. And I think the government has to start doing more things than just helping you buy an electric car.
Yeah.
To make this happen. It's a huge issue.
No, I support totally all this green initiative, but I think there has to be a slow transition phase. You just can't do immediately, stop everything. There's a lot of livelihood, especially.
No, I agree. And we don't have time. We don't have a lot of time to do it slowly. Like we run out of time. But there are things we could be doing. For example, Trudeau said he was going to plant 2 billion trees.
Yeah.
And as we all know, trees absorb carbon dioxide and put oxygen into the air. Canada has a lot of trees, but not a single tree has been planted under this program. And yet it is such a simple and sensible way to buy us some more time to do the kinds of things that you're talking about. We could buy another 25 years if we did this on a global scale.
Yeah. Okay, so other one interesting is the Bloc Quebecois proposal. What they're saying is they want a green equalization fund, right? So what they're saying is they will compel the provinces that have emission higher than the national average to pay into a green equalization fund. That's a very interesting one.
A green equalization fund, and help me understand what that would do.
So what it'll do is, the provinces that are polluting more, they pay into that account.
Oh, I see.
And provinces having lower carbon, they take that money out, just like the health transfer, I think.
Yes. Okay. No,
that's interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting idea.
Yeah.
But I think everybody has to agree on that, right?
Well, I mean, I lived for a year in Manhattan, and nobody has a car in Manhattan except the very rich. And it's because it is too expensive and inconvenient to own a car. It is just a pain. It is easier to get out, walk, use the subway, take a cab. And I think we have to make it so that it's just easier to do the right thing for the environment. And right now it's just easier to do the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's good. Okay. So climate change. We know we are seeing a lot of climate change, more rain. These days in Waterloo region, I'm hearing that this September, it'll feel like a summer. So sometimes I feel climate change is good.
Yeah, I think if you move to Canada, as I have, from a warmer country, it's pretty Yeah, it's cold a lot of the time.
Yeah.
It's hard to get used to it.
I hope Canada won't turn into like a desert, right? Wherever there is a snow, it turns desert.
Yeah.
Wherever there's desert, there's a snow, right?
Well, this is no reason to. I mean, I think we still need to be concerned about it, but I think if you live near the Great Lakes, it's one of the most protected places. So I think we're lucky.
Yeah. Okay, next topic is emergency preparedness. That's still related with the climate change. So, as you know, because of the global warming, global changing, all the climatic change, we are seeing a lot of, fires, flood.
Yes. Yes.
So, we need to be prepared of that. So, I guess most of our parties are also prepared.
Yes.
They also have a lot of money. So, what the liberals are promising is they will spend 500 million to train at least 1,000 firefighters in targeted wildlife risk management strategies, as part of that strategy. So 1,000 firefighters, they will fund it. So
Okay.
for me, that is not prevention. That is
No.
after the fire has happened, somebody is there to, put water on it. So
Right.
that's their proposal. I don't see anything else.
It's
So,
like offering flood insurance, isn't it? You
so
know?
what? Okay, so what conservatives are proposing is they are proposing for a residential high risk flood insurance program.
Mhm.
But I think in some forms, the insurance companies already have some form. Your premium must have gone up, at least in my case. So when I spoke to my insurance, they said, because of global climatic change, the water level can go up. So, we have to charge you more. So that
Well, it's
already exists.
true.
Yeah.
It's true because the storms are more intense.
Correct.
Well, and then more people get flooded basements and they get water coming through the roof or whatever it is. And if they want to make a claim, which most people will, then that's what happens. So
Yeah.
there's, yeah, I mean, there's the preventing climate change and then there's living with climate change. And I suppose
Yeah.
we have to have strategies for both of those things.
Yeah. So liberals also they will spend billions, but there's not much detail where, disaster recovery. I
Yeah.
think the whole world is making money out of fear.
Well, for sure. For sure.
Like insurance, I find it's a very interesting business. All you
Yeah.
need to do is send a renewal paper. That's it. Rest everything is fear. What if your car gets, you are in an accident? What if somebody dies? What if your house gets caught fire? What if it gets flooded? It's fear, and you make money,
That's for sure.
right?
You sound like you know something about it.
I know. I worked in insurance industry, so I know.
Did you? Oh, I didn't know that. And did you
Right?
get rich?
So, it's good for employees,
Yeah,
bonus, all those money. But I'm saying the
yeah,
whole industry works on fear, right?
it does.
Right. So that's what liberals are proposing. So conservatives, they're saying they want to have like residential high risk flood insurance program, but I don't think that's a creative thing. It's already exists. Let's say after snow, after winter, there are a lot of places get flooded, right? Because of the ice melt and all that.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm assuming those areas already are part of the high risk insurance, right?
I mean, I haven't looked at the climate mitigation strategies, to be honest with you, but I think where we have some really big problems is people who live not only in the forests that may be burning, but also who live near the coast and who live in the north, where the tundra is thawing and the houses are just kind of becoming unlivable in because they're not secure.
I feel at some point of time we have to live in an elevated house or we have to find
Mhm.
another planet.
Well, I have a sister who lives on Long Island in New York, and Hurricane Sandy came in, and they put their house up on stilts.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah, she lives not far from the ocean, and that's what they had to do.
Yeah, there is a place in India called Cherrapunji in Assam. It's famous for one horn rhinoceros. That place is in the records for the highest rainfall in the world.
Oh, really?
So their houses are, it's more of a rural area. Most of the houses are elevated because of the
Fantastic.
water and all that. They
Yeah.
also see snake and other things, right?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
The other one, okay, on this same topic, emergency preparedness, the green idea is very interesting. They want to plant billions of fire resistant trees.
Fire resistant trees?
So yeah, so I
It's
did a
very
research.
interesting.
I did honestly, I didn't know even there are trees that are fire resistant, but there are fire resistant trees.
What are they?
There are some names I don't remember right now, but they want to plant billions of fire resistant trees wherever they can predict that there'll be, fire or something. But I don't know how that will work.
Fascinating.
Yeah, that's interesting. I
Yeah.
think it even if it gets catches fire, it won't burn like any other tree. I think that's the one.
Interesting.
That's
Now,
interesting. There are a couple of trees which are fire resistant.
the minute I get off this program, I'm going to go and look that up.
Yeah, look that up. So that was interesting. The green
Yeah.
one, fire resistance. The other
Mhm.
one I liked previously about the green was they also talked about climate refugee program. So a lot of
Mhm.
people will be displaced because not because of the security issue, but because of the natural disaster.
Yeah, that's right.
So I think in the previous election they did mention about that. That's another interesting one.
Yeah, and people living in low-lying areas in I think of somebody like in Bangladesh, for example,
Yeah,
where it's very close to sea level.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. Foreign policy. Okay,
Okay.
so it's very interesting. I thought foreign policy has a lot of other geopolitical strategic. So they have been focusing more on the resettlement of the Afghan situation, refugees, that kind of thing.
Mhm. Yeah.
But I haven't seen more details. But I think conservatives are the only ones which are mentioning China in the platform,
Right.
right? So
Yeah.
China is becoming threat not only for Canada. Canada in that way is, it's not that so powerful, but even America is worried, India is worried, Japanese are worried. A lot of apprehension about them, but I only see conservatives leading on that front. Even Erin O'Toole making statement, against the Chinese regime,
I
those
agree.
right? Trudeau, I haven't seen much. I don't know whether the reason is because two of our Michaels are stuck there,
That's right.
right? So I don't know the reason, but I haven't seen a hard tone from Trudeau. I like to see that. So what the Liberals are saying is they pledge to resettle 40,000 Afghan refugees. Conservatives are saying they are open to the idea of settling 20,000, which is half of that.
So the Liberals said 40,000. I thought they said 20. They must have changed it.
Maybe the change. Yeah, a lot of flip flop happen, right? So
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, so basically focus on Afghan. So I think on the Afghan issue, yeah, Canada is not a major player, but they are part of the allied forces. I think they just screwed it up. I'm okay with moving out. That's fine in a timely manner, or you evacuate your people first, and then you say goodbye to Taliban, right? But they just literally, I felt the America just literally ran away like a rat.
Well, yes. And I think that all the countries that were in Afghanistan knew that there was going to be the withdrawal of the United States in the spring. And so I don't know why they didn't remove themselves earlier than they did. They were all seemed to be taken by surprise how quickly the Taliban took over.
I think during the Trump administration, I think in Qatar they signed an agreement for a time-bound, you know, exit plan. But everybody felt that you'd have a strategy, right? I saw some videos where Americans were already preparing, right? They were destroying some of the sophisticated
Right.
technological devices, all those things before leaving. But I don't know, it was a total intelligence failure or what. I felt it was one of the weakest point of in terms of the American foreign policy. I felt I never seen America, running away like this.
Mm. It was terrible. I
It's,
think I think it's a lesson to us all that it's much more difficult to go in and make a country be different. You
yeah,
know, I it breaks my heart to see all of these women who had careers and jobs and educations now literally being pushed behind a wall of cloth and not allowed to participate as full citizens. It breaks my heart. And at the same time, I was shocked, like everybody else, to see how quickly the country reverted back to what it had been before. I know that the Americans went in not to change the society there, but to get rid of Al Qaeda um, and Bin Laden. But I think the mission became one of trying to change society, And it's a very interesting and sobering lesson that the minute you're gone, it all goes back to what it was before.
Yeah. So I think all the money, all this investment, all the taxpayers' money they spent for all these years, I felt it just evaporated.
Well, I don't agree with you. I think that offering women and girls a different kind of life for 20 years
Yeah, that way,
is
yeah, you
not
can say.
nothing. It's not nothing.
Yeah,
I mean, it has gone away again, but it
yeah,
hasn't been wiped out. Like those women and those girls know what it felt like to be liberated.
right,
And
right.
and
I
so
agree that way. Yeah,
they would be able now to
yeah,
push for change if they can.
yeah.
That will be up to them.
No, I'm
Um,
thinking of more of a permanent solution, right? I felt
right.
all those women were like, I felt the Afghan people were betrayed by America,
Yes,
right? It was very tragic. You must have seen all those videos.
I
Yeah,
did. I did. And I think there's always a real danger in making a promise that you aren't sure you can keep. And how can you promise to change another country?
mhm.
They can't even change their own country.
Yeah, yeah. Even the Afghan forces just gave up. That's another unfortunate. The
Yep,
president also ran away with all those
ran
money.
away. Like horrifying.
Yeah. Okay, so next topic is green energy.
Oh yes.
So what the liberals are saying is they want all the new cars and light duty trucks sold in Canada to be zero emission by 2035. I think that would be a fantasy world, I feel. By 2035, we are already 2021.
That's
The
right.
zero, the
You buy a
zero
new car
emission.
right now, it might still be on the road in 2035 if you're lucky,
Yeah.
right?
And they are proposing a 50% cut in general tax rate for corporations and small business, making net zero technology. So companies that going to make net zero emissions technologies, they will get 50% reduction in the tax. I think that's not a bad idea,
No.
right? So that's good.
Okay, let me ask you this, Manny. Has any of the parties talked about reinstituting a bus service from city to city after Greyhound gave up the ghost earlier this year?
No, nothing. But I think that would be more on transportation. But I haven't seen anything from the federal government unless because municipalities or province want to deal with it, right?
It's all part of the same thing. Like you wouldn't need vehicles on the road at all if you had better public transportation.
Yeah, but I haven't seen anything on that front.
No, but it's
Yeah.
crazy. It's like there has to be, you know, if you don't have a car and you can't get to Guelph,
Hmm.
then that's not acceptable. Do you know what I mean? Then that's forcing you. If you live in Kitchener and you work in Guelph, then you have to get a car, unless the train can take care of your needs, which right now it often cannot. So if there was a bus, that would just make it easier. And then if people don't buy cars at all, that's better than having zero emission electric vehicles, which still have environmental problems. For example, with the production of the battery and the store and the transportation of the battery, they're not truly zero emission.
Yeah, that word is misleading. Zero. There's always
Very
emission
misleading.
somewhere, right? So that is a. But I think in India they are already running intercity buses. They already started. So there are mix of green.
Mhm.
The only two issues is the mileage and the charging, right? So for the long haul, the issue is the charging part. So I was
Yeah,
talking, yeah. So I was talking to somebody who owns a Tesla. So even for Tesla, let's say you want to go to US, you have
yeah.
to use the GPS where the Tesla charging station is, which means, let's say if the travel, usually you travel like 100 kilometers, but if you use the Tesla route, it could be like 120 or 150.
Oh, I know. I don't have a car. I belong to a car sharing service, and
Yeah,
and
yeah.
among the vehicles accessible to me is an electric vehicle. And I remember a couple of years ago, you couldn't even go to Guelph and back with that car, even if it was fully charged.
Right, right.
I mean, it's getting much better, but that's a definite liability. And as I
Yeah.
said, creating that car and shipping the components is a huge environmental cost, even if it doesn't use gasoline. So it's just very complicated.
So as far as NDP is concerned, what they're talking about is they're talking about a climate bank. So what they're saying is replace the Canadian Infrastructure Bank into a climate bank and basically invest, renewable energy, invest all this money into this bank and, but I don't see that as a really effective, this thing. It's just another way,
Yeah.
climate bank, right?
Okay.
The other one is Bloc Quebecois. They're saying the complete abolition of fossil fuel subsidies.
Hmm.
They are saying that, and I think they are very against pipelines and all that. They are not that friendly with Alberta.
Yeah. So, okay, so this is a very interesting issue because I think everyone but the Conservatives, I haven't looked at the People's Party platform, but everyone who already has a member of parliament in the parliament, all of those parties, everyone except the Conservatives wants to get rid of subsidies to fossil fuel companies. And I think that's a good idea. But I think we're a big country and a very diverse country. And when you are the government of the country, you're the government for everybody. You cannot just afford to turn your back on part of the country that produces the oil and gas. You have to be there for whatever transition you're going to make. And I repeat, and I know you agree with me, that it doesn't make any sense to stop producing it here
Yeah,
and to pick it up from Saudi Arabia. That
correct.
doesn't
Yeah,
make sense.
yeah.
Yeah.
And Green Party, what they're saying is that's another interesting. They want 100% of Canadian electricity to be drawn from renewable sources by 2030.
No? Okay.
So that's another for me is a fantasy world.
Well,
2020.
it would take a huge radical shift. But
Yeah,
I mean, we have electricity from renewable sources here, I believe, don't we? I don't know if they would consider nuclear energy to be renewable.
that's sort of. Yeah, it's a clean energy, but the only issue with nuclear is the waste disposal.
Yes, and I'm not sure if nuclear counts. A lot of people are embracing nuclear because it doesn't create emissions until it does.
Yeah.
But
Nuclear, yeah, it's
yeah,
clean, but there are also issues about waste. So somewhere you have to dump or at least put it underneath the ground to make
oh
sure the
yeah.
radiation doesn't come out, right?
And I was at university not too far from 3 Mile Island when that happened in the 1970s. That was
Was
terrifying.
it?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. What else? Okay, next, guns. Okay, so guns, I strongly support liberals.
Hmm.
Personally, I like the Japanese model. No one should own a gun as a civilian. Okay, I can understand if you live in remote places, closer to wildlife, security, you
Hmm.
can have a gun.
Hmm.
Hunting, it's a very different area. Also, I recently watched a show about one, forgot his name. He's a famous hunter from Canada. He travels around the world and he does hunting. So I'm learning about that. So of
Right.
course, for scientific research, those kind of thing. But I don't know. For me personally, for recreational killing someone, even if it's human, animal, is the same.
Yeah, I
It
agree with
doesn't resonate. So I support liberal, but conservatives are saying they're going to re-appeal what the liberals are proposing. There has been some U-turns by
you.
conservatives. Initially, I think Erin O'Toole said he will revert what
Hmm.
liberals did, but now he changed his mind. He said we're going to reclassify what should be banned and what should not be not based on the size of the gun, but the function of the gun, those kind of things.
Right. I was actually encouraged to see that Aaron O'Toole changed his mind on the
Yeah,
guns. People saw that as a sign of weakness, and I saw that as a sign of willingness to be flexible. The
correct, correct,
Conservatives will never get into power if they
correct.
don't understand that Canadians do not want assault weapons to
Right.
be legal.
No, I think that's a valid, good point. And a lot of times politicians are so arrogant, they don't want to change what they said.
Right.
But I feel that is a good sign. I think Doug Ford also did a lot of U-turns. So that's good. At least he's willing to change. But a lot of leaders, if they're arrogant, they won't change at all. So that should not be considered as weakness. That I would consider they are at least listening to the people and overall, sensing, take the corrective step, right?
Yes, they say, they accuse each other of saying anything to get elected, but I
Yeah.
see that as responding to the public. And if the public doesn't like something they've said,
Yeah.
good for them for changing it.
So that's good. So that
We're the boss, right? It's a democracy, so we're the boss.
Yeah. So what the PPC they are saying is they're proposing to firearms should be categorized based on their function, not based on the size of the gun, right? So,
Right.
but they are pro-gun. I think generally conservative People's Party. I think they have a huge firearm vote bank. I think approximately there are around 2 million Canadians who own gun.
Right.
So that's a good chunk of vote bank, right? Wherever you get, you have to represent all parties, regardless whether the other side like it or not.
There are a lot of Canadians, I think a lot more than most of us imagine, that own a gun. But I think when we talk about the damage that guns do, and we think about urban crime, a lot of those guns are smuggled in. They're illegal in the first place. So I don't think you can just talk about, is the gun legal or not? You also have to say, and I know this was a big issue in the 2019 election. You have to say, how did that gun get in here? And is it here legally, or is it an illegal gun? And maybe we need to put more money into the border control so that they can catch guns being brought in illegally, because that's a huge problem. When we think of the damage that guns do, we tend to think of crimes where people are shot, and those crimes are often not happening necessarily with assault rifles, but with handguns.
Yeah.
And the cause of that is partly that they can get the guns because they're illegally brought in. We could stop that. And then there's a whole bunch of other reasons why people shoot each other that have to do with lack of social supports and community supports earlier in their lives. And they join gangs, they get involved in dangerous activities, and they shoot each other. We've
Yeah.
seen that in our own community, an enormous increase.
I think the other one is the conservative. They're proposing stiffer mandatory minimum sentence for criminal
Mm-hmm.
use of gun. I
Mm-hmm.
think sometimes I find the cops they are doing, the work based on the best of their ability. They're catching the culprit, but when they go to the court, they it's lenient, right? Sometimes they
Yeah.
just tend to leave them. After 2-3 years, they'll say there's a parole and all those things. I think we have to strengthen our justice system. I think cops are doing, police officers are doing better job compared to
Yes,
the justice
I
system, I
agree.
find.
I think these days it's very demoralizing to be a police officer
Yeah.
in many ways. And one of the things that's always been difficult, I think, is that you go to all this trouble, you arrest somebody, charge them, they come to the courts, and then they get a very light sentence. They're out again.
Okay, healthcare. Next topic. I don't say much on healthcare. Everybody is willing to spend billions, hire doctors. We have been hearing this. I was checking the Grand River recently. Wait time was, I think, 3 or 5 hours.
Yeah.
Nothing much has changed. So this election, I think healthcare is not a big issue.
Isn't that funny? This is the heart of what's wrong with this election. Can I just say
Correct.
that?
Yeah,
This election is so awful. And one of the things that's awful about it is we've been through 18 months of an extremely difficult time. We've been through a pandemic. We've seen the healthcare system. We've seen all of the places where the healthcare system failed us. And yet healthcare isn't really an issue in the election. Why is it that the thing that has caused us the most collective trauma, in many ways, I mean, there are other things too the pandemic scraped away a certain veneer of society and showed us some very ugly things beneath. But one of the most important things is how terrible the healthcare system has been in some places. And
Mm.
yet there's very little talk about it. Why are we talking about abortions and guns at all
yeah. That is
instead of
that.
healthcare?
Yeah,
That's what I've got to say about that. But yeah, we don't have enough doctors. Our hospital services, we have nurses now quitting because they're completely burned out by this pandemic.
yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen with that. I haven't heard very much about that. And we have long-term care homes that were very, very poorly run.
Yeah.
And at the time, everybody was shocked and said, we've got to do something about this. Now, I think I read that the Liberals are going to hire more personal support workers. But that doesn't change the fact that in some long-term care homes right here in Kitchener, 4 people in a room, disease is going to travel through a place like that very quickly.
I think the issue is who owns healthcare, right?
Yeah.
Federal government says, "Oh, we given the money, it's up to province." Province says, "We gave it to hospital." It's a cycle. I think until unless there is no clear roles and responsibility defined, accountability, this will just continue to, I don't see a short-term hope right at this moment as far as the healthcare wait times are concerned. Doctors, we are
Right.
spending money, billions. I don't know where these billions are going. We are spending. I think in terms of spending, we comparatively spend more than anybody else, but I don't know what the return we are getting. And I don't like even private. If you open up for private, then that's a different thing. I can understand. Some of the labs are already private,
Hmm.
but they should also be mandated by some sort of a federal act or something. Otherwise, when there is a pandemic, there'll be a problem, coordination, just like what we saw in US. I think for pandemic reasons, I find the public healthcare much better option.
Yes, I agree. I think that's one reason why, even though Canadians have a longer life expectancy than Americans do, even though they spend far, far more on healthcare, but it's not equally spent. And we have to consider the good of all when we're talking about the federal government.
Okay. So quick time check. We agreed for 1 hour. Right now it's 15 minutes. Let's see how
Yeah.
far we can cover.
Mhm.
Housing. We know
Hey, housing is a
everybody,
very big issue.
big issue. What the liberals are proposing is they want to increase the first time home buyers tax credit from 5,000 to 10,000,
Hmm.
and they want to force the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation to cut mortgage insurance rate by 25%. I don't know how they can do that. And they want to bring in a home buyers bill of rights to ban blind bidding. A lot of people are bidding, I know, here 4 to 5, 10. That's how the house prices are going up. Yeah, and what else? So they're also talking about home savings account to allow Canadians up to age 40 to save up to $40,000 for their first home and withdraw it tax free. So I think it's just like your TFSA account. They're talking about a home savings account. You can put your money there, and basically you can withdraw it tax free for your house. That's interesting, but I think you can also put the money in TFS account and also get a tax benefit, right?
Yeah, you can do all those things. And there was one time when you could use your RRSPs to put as a down payment. I don't know if you can still do that. But I mean, that stuff is all window dressing. Like that stuff is just details.
Yeah.
The way housing prices have gone up, it's deprived an entire generation of their dream. And it's meant that people who are baby boomers who bought homes when they were relatively affordable, the only people who can benefit, you'd sell your house, you give the money to your children so they can buy a house. But if you don't happen to come from a family of homeowners, then you're out of luck. And that isn't right. And I think we need much more dramatic action than any of these. I mean, the NDP say they're going to build 500,000 affordable housing units, and the Conservatives are going to build 1 million new homes, and that's all fine. I don't know exactly how that works, but I
Yeah.
think there has to be some heavy duty intervention. And I think some of these solutions are very, very minor.
Yeah. I think the other thing is, okay, if they are willing to give money, but they have to partner with municipalities. We have to look at the land acquisition.
Yeah.
A lot of things. It's very easy to say 1 million homes. Okay, that's good, but
But
you have to
look at Kitchener. Look at Kitchener and Waterloo and Cambridge, where you have enormous luxury condos going up, just tons and tons of them. The number of cranes in the sky is just phenomenal. And there is no law that says X percent of these units must be affordable. And by affordable, we mean affordable to somebody, living on $30,000. And who's going to sort of monitor that and keep track of who's there and whether they meet the requirements? I am shocked when I find out how little definition there is of affordable housing with some of these units that are going up. And it's not, the developer is not going to do that unless the law requires the developer to do that.
I think in the case of Waterloo region, I find our local politicians are not showing much spine, on a lot of issues because this comes to local issues. And the federal government can give money, but eventually land acquisition, the cost, everything is done by municipal government, right? At that level, city and all that. There's two things, we can build a lot more houses, but the other thing is then we probably at some point of time, because right now in Waterloo region we have mix of urban and rural mix, so we are enjoying all the nature and all that.
Yep.
If you start building more houses, slowly we won't even see the farms, they gone away. So it
I
will
agree.
help, more houses will help. uh, People getting more houses is good and all that, but there is another side effect is the quality of life. So I always feel that the quality of life is more important than the quantity of houses, right? So
Yeah.
how do you balance? That's another thing, right?
Well, we're a very big country. There should be enough room for houses for everybody who lives here. I mean, if not here, then where?
Yeah. No, I mean specific to the Waterloo region. Like personally, I don't like condominiums.
No.
I'm okay with apartments, anything, because as long as housing stays as a profitable business, the
Mhm.
price will go up. Housing should be for housing,
Mhm.
it's to live, not to, make money out of it, right? So that's the thing. So housing, conservative are saying they spend millions, and they are saying, everywhere, the liberals are saying, ban on foreign ownership. I personally feel that if you are not a Canadian resident, like a PR or Canadian citizen, nobody should be allowed to buy a house. That's my thought.
Well, if you live here, if you buy a house and you don't live in it, it creates a very empty, unwelcoming neighborhood. I agree with that, and it eats up this housing supply.
Yeah.
I don't know how you would police that.
No,
You
so when you buy a house, you make sure you have citizenship or PR, right?
know? Okay, so you work with a Canadian citizen to buy a house.
No, that's that. So that is
Right.
a different way of proxying that. So that you can
Mhm.
always do, but at least
Yeah.
you'll reduce that.
No,
Right
I
now
agree.
anybody
Actually,
can buy, right? Right now anybody in the world without Canadian citizen or PR can buy a house. So a lot of people from outside Canada, they are buying houses here as an investment property.
yeah, and I agree that that does drive up the price, but I don't think it's the only thing by any means.
That's not the only thing. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. So what else we can cover? So long-term care, we know. NDP wants to end private for profit long-term care. I feel I agree. I support that. I think healthcare should not be about profit.
I agree with you, but I don't know how old you are, Mani, but the baby boomers are about to go into those long-term care homes, and there's a whole lot of baby boomers. So without private care, how would we supply enough places for people to go when they need to be in a nursing home?
That's an interesting point. But this is my point. Like,
I do agree with you that it should be public, or if it's private, it should meet very stringent quality control.
yeah, I think some sort of a supervision or price cap would be beneficial, right?
Yeah.
Governance is important thing. I can give you an example. So somebody told one of the person he wanted some rehab
Hmm.
with the alcohol. So, and what I was told was OHIP does cover, but if you go through OHIP, the wait time will be 2 to 3 years. So
That's
this
right.
is related with one of the clinic in Guelph, which is well
Yeah.
known for rehab. So I
Oh,
have a
well,
friend. Yeah, so I have a friend there. So he said, if you're willing to pay, the wait list will come down to 1 year,
well,
right? So
that's what happens, right? That's what
yeah,
happens. And
yeah.
we have to make sure that there's equal access to high quality, but we know that the private sector can provide high quality. So I think to keep the supply up, maybe what we do is not ban all private health care, but just make sure that the quality is high and that it's accessible to all.
Okay, now let's talk about seniors. So, what the liberal they are proposing, they I think in 2019 Trudeau mentioned that he want to increase 10% when it comes to old age, and I read that it's not coming until next year. So 2019, so it will be fulfilled in 2020. So just
Hmm.
to keep them happy,
Hmm.
I think this year, I think in August or something, they announced a one-time payment of $500 to keep those seniors' mouth shut. Right? So they did that, but that promise will be fulfilled only next year.
Okay.
So that is the old age. Conservatives, they are proposing Canada seniors case benefit means $200 a month. If there is somebody who is looking after the seniors, they're willing to give $200 for them.
Right.
Uh, and of course, the caregiver to claim the medical expense tax credit for home care. So you can get tax credit if you're looking after the seniors.
That's going to be very important.
Yeah. NDP proposing a national senior strategy. I like the word strategy, which includes a funded dementia strategy. So they're talking about strategy, but I don't know what is inside the strategy. That is important.
I mean, strategy by itself doesn't mean anything.
Okay, I think in terms of platform, I think another interesting would be racial inequality. A lot of discussion going on.
Yeah.
So liberals announced a black entrepreneurship loan fund. I don't know why specifically for. I don't like the personally. I don't like the word the black, white thing. I like to call African Canadians personally.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Right. White. I like to call Caucasians. Right. So anyway, liberal government wants. They launched this $200 million black entrepreneurship loans fund. I always I think entrepreneurship is there within you. Okay, so we already have entrepreneurship fund programs, but if they have inborn skill, they will drive the business. I don't know how with this program they're going to help African Canadians get into business, because business is not everybody's bread and butter. It requires a special skill.
It does.
All right. I support that people who need money and who have innovative ideas, you should give money, no issues, and it should be across regardless of the race. So I don't know what they want to achieve with this. Probably it was during the BLM movement. They wanted to keep a group happy, and they announced the Black Entrepreneurship Loan Fund. So tomorrow there'll be something. Tomorrow they could be Indian entrepreneurship loan, and tomorrow they could be a religion-based entrepreneurship, right? So
I
that's what.
actually think that is a good idea. I don't agree with you.
Okay.
Just because I think that if you listen to Black and Indigenous and other racialized entrepreneurs, they do have a harder time in every respect because of systemic racism. And I do believe that there is systemic racism in Canadian society. And so I think it's important to help people who have the hardest time with systemic racism by giving a little boost. And I think it's I don't know if it's enough money. I haven't heard much about it, but I like the concept of saying, if you are a person who is racialized or Indigenous or Black and you have a business, then here's some help, because we know that it's harder for you to get a lease, and it's harder for you to get customers, and it's harder for you to have to move up in your business.
Okay.
So
Okay. I think I wanted to cover a couple of them, but these are the most important ones, right? Pipeline is there. We already discussed, the fossil fuel.
yeah.
I support a transition-based, whatever
Mhm.
initiative. You just can't shut down a lot of livelihood. Of course, if the government is willing to help them with a different skill set, all those things, I am okay with that. You can shut down,
Yeah.
but it's easier said than done.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about candidates. We have 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So we have altogether 29 candidates. So in Kitchener Center, we have 6, and Rasani has stepped down. But
That's right.
interestingly, his name is there on the ballot because it was some deadline things.
Yeah. Too
So,
late to change it.
so if people love Trudeau, they can still vote for Rasani regardless
That's right.
whatever the accusations are. So from Kitchener Center, like, are you you had any chat with any of them? So Rasani, Mary from Conservative, Bizan, Zubi, NDP, Mike Morris. My favorite is Mike Morris. Then we have Deanne Boskovic from
Boscovic.
People's Party.
Yeah. Yeah.
You ever had any chat with any?
Yes, I've spoken with everybody but Diane Boskovic from the People's Party. I don't know her. I already mentioned the one from the Animal Protection Party who's running, and that's a very fringe party, but she's in there, and she was there last election as well. I've interviewed Mike and Bisan several times for different things, and I know of Mary. I've met her. And I think that it's a very, very interesting riding, and it's a very interesting three-way race.
Yeah.
Like Mike is somebody who has overcome the fact that he comes from a party with very low levels of support, especially in a place like Kitchener. And he, just by sheer force of his personality and his approach to politics, he has a gigantic organization. He's raised a ton of money. He has signs everywhere. He has hundreds of volunteers. And so every poll I look at, or every everybody who tries to figure out what's going to happen in Kitchener Centre suggests that it's a toss-up between the Conservative, the Green, and the NDP. And Kitchener Centre has drifted left over the past 5 to 10 years, but it's quite possible that the Conservative could win because the NDP and the Green will split that progressive vote, the left-wing vote. Mike, though, is so organized that I feel like he probably has a better chance than the other two just because of the sheer strength on the ground. Like, he's somebody who in the 2019 election brought the Green Party vote from 3% to 26%. He came in second. He beat the Conservative. He came in second to Raj, and Raj, I know, was rattled by what was happening there. So I think it's going to be extremely interesting in Kitchener Centre, and we could end up with, after this very depressing election campaign, from my point of view, we could end up with a really interesting result, which is that a person who has a very independent and very fair-minded approach and listens to people, that person could, by sheer hard work and support of the rest of the community, could get in a political system that doesn't really reward individuals, it rewards political parties. So that's a really interesting one.
Okay, good. So Kitchener-Conestoga, we have almost 5 candidates: Tim Lewis, Liberal Incumbent; Colleen Hawley, Conservative; Narayan Dutt Sukram from NDP; Owen Bradley from Green Party; Kevin from People's Party.
Kevin Dupuis.
Kevin Dupuis, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't want to mispronounce, so that's why I just said that.
Kevin, he's a former Catholic school trustee who resigned after they raised the rainbow flag at the schools.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay.
Very socially conservative.
Okay.
And Colleen Hawley is very socially conservative as well. She comes from a background of. So I think in that riding, it'll be very interesting. And if the People's Party does very well there, which I think they do, then that might take enough votes away from the Conservative to keep the Liberal in power. Because that's a riding where lots more, exactly what's happening that we were talking about, people who are young parents and they want to grow up they want their kids growing up in a small town, but they're not really small town people. They're really kind of city people. And they're just commuting to work in Kitchener, and they're just driving through a bunch of fields on a highway 7-8 to get to work. They're changing that riding so that it isn't as conservative. It's becoming more liberal. So that's going to be a real horse race, that one. And I think a lot will depend on what happens with the People's Party guy. And I'm sorry to say that I don't know that the NDP will have much of a chance out there.
Yeah, Narayan, he ran for mayor last time. Before that, he ran as an independent. Tim Lewis' office, I don't know if you know, his office is close to my place. So previously it was Harold's office. So I think they did the change of lease agreement.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. Maybe he kept the same staff. I don't know. Sometimes they do that.
I think Carleen, she lives in Almira, a little far away. I spoke to her.
And we don't know her very well. One of the problems of this campaign is some of the Conservative candidates have not been very open. They haven't spoken to the media. They haven't gone to debates. They have really not said very much that the voters can get to know them, other than knocking door to door, going door to door.
I think there's a strategy. Last time PC Party, a lot of MPP candidates, they did the same. I think what I'm saying is people who had direct phone conversation. After they become a candidate, they don't want to deal directly. They want to deal with the campaign manager. I think the way system is, the campaign managers, they are under the leash of the campaign managers.
I
This
see.
candidate, especially the new ones,
Yeah.
they don't have the courage to take their own decision because they want all the support of everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Campaign manager, a person who is doing the sign. A lot of people have this thing. Okay, this is my job. Okay, I'm putting a sign. You
Mm-hmm.
don't do that. I'm gonna do that. Campaign
Mm-hmm.
managers are dictating the term. I don't like that. It's like a leash,
Yeah, you're right.
right? So yeah, personally, I don't like the party system. I like
Mhm.
every Canadian to get two votes, one to elect the local candidate and one to elect the leader or the party at the top, right?
Well, we didn't talk about that, you know.
Yeah.
That's a very important thing because we were supposed to have electoral reform and it just isn't happening.
Yeah, it's not happening. I think Trudeau is proposing, he's open to. There's another one. It's not coming into my mind. It's not that he doesn't support the two vote system.
It's the
He,
ranked ballot he
the
likes. But
rank ballot, right, right, right.
when I saw that he'd be interested in having electoral reform, I almost laughed. I laughed very hard
Yeah,
because he already let us down. I don't think anybody's going to get fooled again by that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Kitchener Hespler. We almost have like 8 candidates there.
Yes.
Valerie Bradford from Liberal,
Mm-hmm.
Tyler Calver from Conservative, Suresh Arangat, I know him, NDP, Melissa
Mm-hmm.
from People's Party, Cab Rose, Green Party, Elaine from Marxist Lenin Party of Canada. Interesting.
Yeah.
Stephen Davis, Party, Rhinoceros Party.
Mm-hmm.
C.A. Morrison, Independent.
Yeah.
You know any? You chat with anybody?
I've had a little bit of discussions with some of those people, but I haven't focused on that riding as much as I have
Okay.
on Kitchener Center or Kitchener Conestoga, where very dramatic things may happen. I
Okay.
think I think that riding will go the way the people of Canada feel.
Was it?
I think it could go. It could. I think it'll be very close, and
Mm-hmm.
I think it'll go either to the Liberal or the Conservative.
Okay.
But it's hard to say. Again, there's a lot of new people coming in, and we don't really know much about them,
Yeah.
right? They're commuters. We know they're commuters, so they think GTA. They're more focused on the GTA. That's where their friends are. That's where their work is. But things may have changed during the pandemic too. So it's hard to know, but I do know that the late Barry Kay, who was a political science professor who often correctly predicted elections with great accuracy, the last thing he said to me before he passed away a few years ago was Waterloo Region is becoming more like the GTA.
Yeah.
When you look at what's being predicted for the GTA now, it's quite liberal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's changing definitely.
Yeah.
Waterloo riding, Berthish Shagger, Megan Shannon from Conservative, Jonathan Castle from NDP, Carla from Green, Patrick Set from People's Party. Do you know
Right.
Berthish Shagger?
I know that Jonathan Castles is someone who is a very good candidate from the NDP, that he
Okay.
was head of Fair Vote Canada.
Okay.
And he's pushing for electoral reform. He's taken a break. This area is very focused on electoral reform. I think people are saying that that's a very easy riding for Bodish, but I feel that people are upset with Bodish, though. She's being connected to some of these
Yeah.
pseudo scandals. And I think she was a wonderful assistant to Andrew Telegdi back in the day. She would get things done for people. But I think it's more difficult to be satisfying. Like, I don't know that that's happening now. I think a lot of things don't go right. And then the Bodish needs another Bodish to kind of fix things for people on the
Yeah.
ground. Do you know what I mean?
And the We Charity, we all know.
Yeah.
You
I mean,
know.
I don't know to what extent she was involved in the We Charity. I watched all of the hearings, but it's hard to get a read on it because she was so good at just saying the same thing over and over again,
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
that is the thing. When you have to hide or you're not, you don't want to tell the real truth. You camouflage, art of,
Yeah.
she's
And you
good
look
with that. I think I've seen her in a lot of public places. For me,
yeah.
on Namaste debate, when I'm commenting on something, when I'm commenting, I'm not commenting as an individual. I'm commenting based on their policies.
Right.
All politicians, when you talk to them, they are very nice.
Yeah.
Nobody would be rude. They're all friendly. It's nothing. So when
Yeah.
I comment, is based on policy also.
Of course.
I had chat with her on the healthcare thing and all that. I didn't get a satisfying answer. So like you said, she's a very good talker. I see her taking a lot of pictures. She's very good, encouraging students.
Yeah.
A lot of volunteers are there. That those are the good thing. But when it comes to work, I don't know. But anyway, we'll see. Okay, last but not the least, Cambridge. We have Brian May. I can't.
Yes.
Brian May. He blocked me on Facebook. Okay.
What? Why?
I think the only thing probably I remember was one comment where I think the last election, he went to one of the Gurudwara in Cambridge,
Yeah.
and he was offering the food, and somebody took his picture, probably his assistant or somebody, and he posted. So basically it's giving an impression that he's very supportive of the community and all this. So I just wrote a comment, how many times you have been here, right? And
That's totally fair.
after that, the comment section is not there for me.
Really? That's awful.
I can tell you okay, so I can tell you a couple of names who have blocked me. One is the CBC political anchor. What's her name? The famous.
Lucy Barton?
Yes. So she has blocked me on Twitter. Okay. Then Jason Kenney.
He blocked you?
Yeah. Patrick Brown.
This is awesome.
Okay. I think Marwan has blocked me on Twitter. Okay. So I take it as a credit. See, I always say you block if somebody abuse or something. I never abuse anyone. I'm critical.
No.
I can be critical, right?
I've never seen you be abusive. If people are blocking you because of what I see you posting, then they're too sensitive.
Right. So they feel they're wrong or something. They block me. I never block anyone. I get a lot of comments. This is. I like it. I like trolls. I love it.
Yeah.
But these are all this big celebrity. People block.
Yeah, I know you like a good fight. I see that.
Because what happens is a lot of people don't question deep into why and all that, right?
Yeah,
I think most of the Canadian journalism is very polite. You ask a lollipop question and you get lollipop answer.
Love it.
Right?
Steal that line, Manny.
So when I started Namaste Debate, my objective was sort of a grilling kind of thing. When you have to, it's nothing about individual, it's about policy, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, so Brian May, I remember, Connie Cody from Conservative, Lon Bruce, Michelle from Green, Maggie from People's Party. You know anybody? Brian May?
I know everybody but the People's Party person.
Oh, is it okay?
Yeah, so Brian May, he's a foot soldier. Okay. He's a very nice man on a personal level, I have to say. I find him very warm and very, very connected on a human level with the people in his riding. I will say that about him.
Yeah. I think I met him. You're talking Brian May, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I met him at one of the restaurant ribbon cutting. So.
Oh yeah.
Like I said, everybody is nice. I'm not saying bad. So
Yeah.
They're all nice. When it comes to work, I don't know.
Well, I remember. I think he's honest, and I think he's a kind person, and I don't think he'd lie to me. In fact, I know he won't lie to me because he once told me that he didn't want to tell me. Pardon me?
Politicians should not lie to a journalist.
No, I quite agree, but it happens.
Yeah.
Connie is very active in the movement to keep people with addictions away from services in the core of Cambridge. So she's a very controversial candidate.
Okay.
And she's also somebody who has not been available to speak publicly at debates or in news interviews. Like, we sent out a questionnaire to each of the candidates and she didn't answer it.
Okay.
Carly.
Probably she's gonna win. Okay.
I don't know if she's going to win. I think the last I read was that it was leaning liberal, but we just don't know until voting day comes, right? Lon Bruce is somebody who is very strong NDPer. He's run for many campaigns. He's like a stalwart of the party. And like I said, I remember when Cambridge only went Conservative or NDP, but it never went liberal. But now it's a more liberal place because of the movement of people from the GTA here looking for cheaper housing. So the search for cheap housing has really changed the whole identity of this area, which is so interesting. It's become more multicultural. It's become more Toronto focused. It's become more liberal.
I met one conservative candidate, I think, a few months back. So he was here to meet, and during the conversation, he was actually looking for an option to see if he could run from Cambridge or not. But he
Yeah.
lives in Mississauga, Brampton area.
Yeah.
And you know why they were doing that? Because they do, all these political parties, they do an internal survey.
Mm-hmm.
And based on that, they know which side it is. So they look for safer seat.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but now this candidate is not running from here, running from Mississauga, Brampton. I don't want to name that person.
Well, it's interesting. Cambridge is one of those places. I just told you that a lot of people moved here from elsewhere, but it still
Yeah.
has a core of people who are very, very protective of Cambridge, and they think the rest of the world is out to get them. And one of the things that they do is if you don't come from Cambridge, they don't like you. Like they even give the mayor of Cambridge a hard time because she lives in North Dumfries. Her house is in North Dumfries for a bunch of reasons. She was going to move to Cambridge and then didn't. For a very good reasons, but personal reasons, and she still gets heck from people in Cambridge who think that the mayor of Cambridge should live in Cambridge, even though she spends so much time in the city. It's
But
very
I
interesting.
feel, being politician, you need to have thick skin. Yeah,
Yo,
like that's
I'm
the
just
way
saying,
it is.
if that was Kitchener or Waterloo, people wouldn't care. If
After
somebody
foreign,
if
yeah,
somebody is the mayor of Waterloo and they live across the border in Woolwich Township, I don't think anybody would care.
yeah. But I think you have to make a case. I always look at the merit of that candidate, right?
Yeah,
What
of
he or
course.
she brings in, right? For me, it doesn't matter. After watching Indian politics, I feel I'm ready here.
When are you going to run for something? That's what I'd like to know.
Next year, yeah.
Oh, will you? In the
Uh,
municipal elections?
Municipal. I'm not a partisan. I don't want. I have been like the inner circles inside. I know how the politics works, what
Yeah.
is required, but I'm not a partisan. I have leaned towards liberals. I have leaned towards conservative. I have leaned towards PPC. I like green, but
Yeah.
I'm not a partisan. The reason is I cannot be contained.
Yeah.
I can only be contained by the people. I like, people should judge me, not a party or a leader.
Right.
So it's very hard to boss me. So, right, I'm a free bird. I'm a swing voter,
So
right?
you transcend ideology.
Yeah, I'm a free bird. So I can swing. Yeah, I'm one of the most untrusted voter.
Love it. Well, I hope that you run municipally. I will look forward to that.
Yeah, so we'll see. I have plans. I say I don't like secret. I know a lot of people want to run. They have told me, but because they have asked me not to, so I won't. But I'm very clear. I have intention,
Yeah.
and we'll see. It's I like to do what the reason is. You need power to make change. I always feel that,
You're
right?
quite right.
If you don't have power, I can keep continuing, saying you are not doing this. I can say you are hopeless, you are incompetent. What I want to do is I want to make myself vulnerable, and I want somebody else to say you are incompetent, you are hopeless.
Right.
I like it. I like somebody when they say, you're this, that. I like it. It gives me more energy. It's the reverse energy I like.
Well, you've got the thick skin that you need. That's
Right.
for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So, life is short. If you have dream or ambition, my dream is I'm a selfless guy. I don't do anything thinking about me. Right.
Right.
Even yesterday when I was talking to my friend, I said what I pray is God give me peace of mind.
Yeah.
God give me good health so that I can help others. That's it. Right.
Wonderful.
So, Luisa, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Final closure, like you can say all the good things about tomorrow, what people should do, encourage people to vote. Go ahead.
I think people need to go out and vote. As difficult as this election has been, as dispiriting as it has been, something really wonderful happens when it's just you and that ballot and nobody can see what you're doing, and the country makes a big group decision out of millions of little tiny individual decisions. I think it's quite magical. It's something that we should cherish, and we'll just see what comes out of it. because sometimes, the polls don't always predict things. People know in their hearts, or they don't know until they walk into the complete privacy of that booth, and then they vote, and it's a wonderful thing. I'm
I
looking
don't know if
forward.
you know or not. In India, they use an electronic voting machine. On that, there is an option called Nota. You know what is
Yeah,
Nota?
none of the above.
Yeah. So I would say, people, you only have one vote. If you don't like your local candidate, but you like your leader, you still have one vote. And sometimes you don't like your leader, but you like your MP, you still have
Yeah,
one vote. So exercise your vote cautiously, read the
yeah,
platform,
yeah.
think, decide. And if you still are not convinced, just go there and says, I don't want to vote. That is called Nota.
That's what the Rhinoceros Party is for.
Is it? Okay. Okay, Luisa, it was a pleasure talking to
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
It
you.
was a pleasure being here. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you so much.
Great
Appreciate
honor.
it. Have a
And
good night. Yeah.
thank
Right.
you. You too. Bye-bye.